Compatible box, minimum 2 megabits per second broadband speeds, setup and family or HD subscription. Terms and conditions apply.
It's 9 o'clock across the UK.
We do have a lot of nurses who come from other parts of the world, other parts of Europe, to help out in our NHS. And I don't think we should somehow, deny the fact that they do a great job. Lots of them do a brilliant job. And it's one of the reasons why I always think that if you did what UKIP say and large parts of the Conservative Party say and just pull the drawbridge up, our NHS would collapse overnight.
The most talked about radio show is here. Call Clegg. Get straight through now. 0345 6060 973. Leading Britain's conversation. This is Call Clegg with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Only on LBC.
So it's time for Call Clegg with me, Nick Clegg, here on LBC. And I will be here, as ever, for the next half an hour taking your questions. So do call on 0345 6060 973 or email at nickclegg@lbc.co.uk. And, of course, you can watch on the website lbc.co.uk. So let's go straight to the first caller, who is Laura in Barnet. Hello, Laura.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, I'd like to ask Nick Clegg, isn't it high time that the British stop interfering and meddling in the Middle East? We've been backing one side against another side, causing huge division. You begin to wonder if this isn't actually a policy to cause division and endless strife over there. The results of our invasion into Iraq and the occupation there have what has led to this now, and yet we're still talking about flying more sorties, sending more weapons. We prop up unsavoury characters like King Abdullah, who's looking now to kill more people. Yesterday he executed 2 people, including a woman. Is this what we want to be part of? Surely it's not our fight. Surely it's time we had better things to do with the money that we spend on all this endless war back at home.
Well, Laura, funny enough, I think the answer is we possibly should do more on some issues and less on others. As you know, Laura, I'm the leader of the only main party in Westminster that objected to the decision, supported by both Labour and the Conservative parties, to go into war with Iraq, so fatefully all those many years ago now. So on that one, I strongly agree with you. I thought that was a huge mistake, probably one of the biggest foreign policy mistakes of modern times. I think on the present kind of conflict and violence in Syria and Iraq, I agree with you that... I agree with you to the following extent. There's no way that we, the United Kingdom, certainly not on our own, actually not even the rest of the world altogether, will somehow be able to kind of fix the bloodshed in Syria or fix the bloodshed in Iraq. In Iraq, for instance, it requires a reconciliation between the very, very deep-seated tensions between the Shia communities and the Sunni tribes, which isn't yet happening. That's not, something we might be able to help with. In fact, there was a committee of MPs in the House of Commons who just this very morning have said we should be doing more on that. And then, of course, there is the ongoing crucible of so many tensions in the region, namely the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where my own view has long been that we have, as a country, we've sort of deferred perhaps too much to the view that America is the only country that can try and exert any meaningful influence. I've always felt that the European Union, given that it is a sort of economic superpower for the countries of the Middle East, we're by far the largest donor of assistance to Palestinian communities. We are by far the largest destination for exports of goods and services from Israel. I think we could use that economic muscle more effectively than we have done. But I guess my answer to you, Laura, is I don't think it's a sort of simple rule of should we do nothing or should we do, more? I think it does slightly depend on the issue, but it needs to be done with intelligence and also with a fair degree of humility. This idea, this kind of vaguely imperial idea that I don't think very many people have them anymore, but they certainly seem to around the time of the Iraq War, that somehow we can charge into other countries and just fix everything, is clearly something which experience shows is not the case.
Laura, let's bring you back in. What would you say to Mr. Clegg?
Yes, absolutely. You can't bomb your way to peace. More murders, more killing, more deaths is not going to help. And that's why I'm so horrified at King Abdullah's response to it. I really think that we shouldn't be involving ourselves in going over there and dropping more bombs. Inevitably, innocent people get killed too. So,
yeah, but Laura,
time we stopped.
Look, of course, I accept. Everybody listening to this, Laura, will agree with you that, of course, violence begets violence. And I'm always, by the way, very struck when I speak to senior military people how they always say, look, military force is only one component in providing a solution to a conflict. You always have to have, politics has to play its role. In Afghanistan, it's a very good example. We had our very brave servicemen and servicewomen there for many, many years. But when I went to visit them in Helmand, they would say to me, look, we can do our bit as people who wield force in the military, but at the end of the day, it's the politicians in Kabul who need to kind of get their act together to create the conditions for peace. And I think everybody knows that force alone is not a solution. But sometimes, of course, it is necessary, and it is certainly, I think, justified that we play a role. Only a role, not a sort of all-encompassing role in the international coalition to make sure that where ISIL is going around slaughtering innocent women and children, beheading and burning their hostages, that we play our part in seeking to keep them in check and over time roll them back, because they are an odious force who not only threaten people there, they also, of course, in the long run can threaten you, Laura, us, all of us here, because they can radicalise young Britons who might go out there, or in fact do go out there, we know that, and get absolutely immersed in the bloodshed and the warped ideology of those conflicts. And then some of them, of course, might want to come back here and inflict that violence on our own streets.
So just to explore one point that Laura made, was King Abdullah right to order the execution of the 2 al-Qaeda suspects?
Look, I, and in fact the British government, and we as a country, are in principle opposed to the death penalty. So, however understandably enraged the people of Jordan are by this, unspeakably barbaric sight of one of their own kind being burned alive. I mean, it's just...
Did you see the video?
No, I haven't seen it, actually. I haven't. Have you?
I have.
Yeah. No, I haven't.
You cannot describe it.
Yeah.
The way they plan it, the way it is executed, I mean that word.
And I'm told the way it
is mixed with effects, the way music is put over it. It is almost like the days I would suggest of Nazis or Pol Pot. It is just beyond sinister.
Yeah. Well, and for those very reasons...
but then the execution of those 2...
Well, all I'm saying is that I can totally understand who could possibly not understand the absolute rage of that side of the Jordanian people. Do I think that deploying the death penalty is a solution? I'm afraid I think you have to be principled on the death penalty. You either believe as a society that you use it or you don't. We've believed as a country for a long time, and I certainly support that we don't.
And then lastly on this, you'll have seen one of the front pages of the newspaper this morning, The Guardian, step up the fight against ISIS, say MPs. The Guardian refers to it as a trenchant report that Britain is not doing enough. We need to be more robust. Are they right?
I think no. I don't think they're right. I heard Rory Stewart, who's a Conservative MP, but knows a lot about the region, and I think he was speaking very thoughtfully about this. So I don't want to dismiss it lightly at all, and I certainly would want to have a good look at the report that they have produced. But I think to the suggestion, at least, maybe this is the way it was just reported, that somehow our commitment can be measured according to the number of boots on the ground in Baghdad. I think that is a misplaced measurement. Where I do accept at least some of the commentary I've heard just fleetingly this morning is the importance of using British expertise to get the Sunni tribes in Iraq to feel more comfortable with the government in Baghdad, because of course it's the fact that the Sunni tribes in Iraq are disenchanted with their own government in Iraq, which is giving ISIL the space to run riot and inflict their grotesque violence in large parts of Iraq right now.
We move on to other questions, Mr. Clegg.
Nigel in Chadwell Heath. Hello, Nigel.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning.
Just in relation to this Julian Assange case, I'm a little bit mystified. Perhaps you could enlighten me. I understand that it's costing thousands of pounds on a daily basis to maintain vigil outside the Ecuadorian embassy. He sought refuge there, and of course he's entitled to it once he's inside the refuge. The embassy, as I understand, it's now regarded as Ecuadorian territory. Hardly a friendly act talked on behalf of the Ecuadorian government. Why on earth don't we just close the Ecuadorian embassy, ask their diplomats to leave, and arrest him on the way out? How long is this farce going to continue?
Now, this is after the LBC put in an FOI, Mr. Clegg, and discovered the cost is now more than £10 million. I don't know why, but it's around £10,000 a day, and it is now over £10 million has been spent guarding the embassy.
For the policing.
For policing costs, I'm so sorry, in which Mr. Assange is holed up, Mr. Clegg.
Well, Nigel, look, am I frustrated that this goes on and on like this? Am I frustrated that taxpayers are picking up, the tab around the Ecuadorian embassy? Yeah, sure. Just imagine the frustration of the Swedish government. Hardly a, how can I put it, in a liberal rogue state. This is a country of impeccable democratic credentials with a well-respected judicial system, who say that he should go to Sweden to face very serious allegations and charges of. I think it's of rape.
Potential rape, which he denies.
Which he denies. But and of course, the right thing for him to do is to do that. It's just to face justice, and face justice in a country, as I say, where due process is well established.
But I don't think we can shut embassies down, Mr.
No, Nigel. Sorry. Yeah, in answer to your question, no, I don't look. The whole point about embassies is that you have embassies. We all have embassies in countries where we don't particularly get on with them, and we have embassies of countries which we don't particularly agree with. I mean, that's the whole point about having embassies, is that you maintain a link between countries, even at moments of tension. And I think, therefore, you need to think very, very carefully, and only in very exceptional circumstances close embassies altogether, and so several links with other countries.
This £10 million and £9 million for a Chilcot inquiry, which we still haven't seen. Sir John appeared before a panel of MPs yesterday. How do you think he fared, Mr. Clegg?
I will try and be. I didn't see it all. I didn't see it all. Look, how can I put this? I think
he was a bumbling civil service lifer, Mr. Clegg.
Well,
how would you respond?
No, I think I'm sure that is an impolite way of talking about a distinguished gentleman who's running a very important process. His reputation, I think, will rest more heavily on the quality of his final report than the actual performance before that select committee, and that's why we're all waiting, to put it mildly, with bated breath for the report finally to be produced.
Is he fit for purpose?
Of course he is, otherwise he wouldn't be carrying on doing it. And he was asked to do it by the previous government, and as you know, the original assertion made by Gordon Brown at the time was that this would be all complete within a year. I don't know, how many years is it now?
It's 4 years to the month since the last person gave evidence. 5.5 years since it started.
Yeah, and I am, I'm deeply frustrated that it's taking so long. He sought to explain yesterday why it's taking so long.
I must have missed that bit. He was asked, when might it be ready? I don't know. Can you give us a rough sense? I don't know. Has everyone who needs to be Maxwellised? I'm not going to tell you. How many have replied who've been Maxwellised? I'm not going to tell you. You thought those were answers?
I think he should set. I mean, he's independent, and so do stress this. I've written letters to him. He's written back to me. I can urge him as much as I do to get on with it. But at the end of the day, he has to determine the work of his own commission. I do, however, think, given how disenchanted the public's become by the delay of this, it would do his own work a power of good just to set some deadlines and to force the pace. And look, I understand this Maxwellisation, which is basically jargon for a bit of to and fro between those who criticised, and so they've got a reasonable opportunity to respond. Everybody accepts that, but you've got to have you've got to have a deadline to that, and that's why I've suggested to him, look, even if you can't do it before the election, just tell us when.
Yeah. When you're Prime Minister this May,
yes.
What would
can you just say that again, Nick? I didn't hear that.
What would be the point at which government would intervene?
This is a prediction. a Ferrari prediction.
We're getting on.
I cling.
If you can get the sort of numbers that we're getting at LBC, you'd be in with a landslide.
Effortlessly.
These figures are extraordinary. We'd have more than a working majority if we were in power, Mr. Clegg. We'd be running the world. Now back to this. How much longer up with this we will put? Another year? 2 years? At what point would the government say, whoever the Prime Minister might be, he or she...
Well, since you asked about my own view, my patience is running very thin indeed. I mean,
right. So you give him 12 months?
I give him... I really hope that Commission produces its report as quickly after the general election as possible.
6 months after the general election?
I'd like it to be a matter of weeks after the general election, ideally. It cannot go on for much longer like this, because otherwise I think people will... will feel that the final product, even if it's a very distinguished, balanced, incisive product, people will kind of...
They've made up
you know
their
what
minds.
I mean? Yeah, exactly. That's the problem.
I know.
The longer this runs on, the credibility of the whole process will then start sullying the content of it.
We move to other matters, Mr. Clegg. Where are we going now?
John in Eastbourne. Hello, John.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Clegg. I'd just like to take up an issue with you, if I may. It's a matter you have dealt with before on LBC. My question to you is, this week on Monday, on the BBC News 24, they did show some terrible footage in there of what was going on in a Haller slaughterhouse in North Yorkshire.
Yes.
Presume you're aware of that?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
I mean, the thing is, Nick, in Britain, we always have prided ourselves in the past to try and set good standards. And I just think Denmark has now put an outright ban on Haller slaughter. And obviously, a slaughterhouse is never going to be a pleasant place for any normal person to want to go and visit for a day out. But, I think at the end of the day, all livestock animals should be slaughtered humanely. Yeah. And I find it totally inexcusable that your party, the Tory party and the Labour Party are all totally in favour of animals being slaughtered without any pre-stunning. I just do not know in the 21st century how you're justifying that.
So John, firstly, I was deeply shocked by those reports of what was happening in that slaughterhouse, and thankfully the Food Standards Agency or authority, I forget which one it is, but anyway, they've gone in, they've taken, I think they've revoked the licence from that abattoir.
If I can just interrupt you there, Nick, sorry, the plant was the very next day was still carrying on working, and Animal Aid apparently done.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The slaughtermen have been suspended. The slaughtermen who've been filmed by Animal Aid.
I should have been more precise. They've been suspended. You're quite right. You're quite right, John. But, John, can I just? Here's the nub of it for me. What those individuals were doing was just cruel, right? They were kicking the heads of some of these poor animals. They were abusing them. And here's my point: that could have happened in an abattoir which was either killing animals, on halal principles, or stunning them. That's not in a sense, it's not whether it was halal or not. That could have happened. That kind of arbitrary, inhumane cruelty could have happened in a slaughterhouse which was stunning all the animals beforehand. So I just don't accept I think the implication of your question that this was because they were being killed according to halal principles. And I think it is right for us to say, particularly to our Jewish and Muslim communities in our country, you have the right to have food prepared and animals slaughtered according to your traditions. It needs to be done humanely, and that is what, on the whole, I think does happen. The cruelty we saw there was nothing to do, I think, with the fact that that those animals were being slaughtered according to halal principles. They could have, as I said, been just as badly abused and cruelly treated, even if they were subsequently stunned.
John?
Well, if I can just quickly come back to you on that one. Animal Aid apparently did covert video in 10 slaughterhouses, 10 Haller slaughterhouses, and 9 of the slaughterhouses, they found terrible abuses against the animals. At the end of the day, a bolt to the head is the only sane, decent way to dispatch an animal if it's going to go into the food chain. To cut an animal's throat wide open, leave it conscious for a few minutes after, is totally unacceptable in any civilised society. And I still say, and I'm sure many people out there today listening to me will agree, that in the 21st century, your party, the Tory party and the Labour Party need to take a moral stand on this and to say, we want all our livestock slaughtered in a humane manner.
Well, John, I think on one specific issue, you and I are just going to disagree. I take, if you like, the moral standpoint that our Jewish and Muslim communities, according to very, very long-standing, indeed ancient customs, want to maintain the tradition of having animals slaughtered in a particular way. That, and I think it's right for us in a plural, tolerant society to do that. That can be done in a way which is entirely consistent with our equally strongly held views about animal welfare. My point to you is, someone who wants to kick a sheep in a head will do that as randomly and cruelly as that, regardless of what subsequently happens to that animal, whether it's stunned or not.
We move on to other calls. John, thank you.
Niran, is it Niran or Niran in Edgware?
Yes, Niran.
Hello, Niran.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning. Okay. Just wanted to give you a background about myself. I am a Jew who left Iraq in the beginning of the 70s. Now, I left because I was singled out as a nation or as a race because I'm Jewish. I was persecuted, not myself, but as a community. I left Iraq, I came to the UK, but unfortunately, in the last few years, specifically now, I'm feeling that I am reliving what I lived in Iraq through my children. I have to protect them. I have to avoid sometimes to say that I'm a Jew. And it's actually very, very sad. It saddens me that I come to this country knowing that it's a free country and I have to live that. Now, the second thing, I just want to ask your opinion about anti-Semitism. I do not call it anti-Semitism. It's racism because this race is being singled out. And as far as I know, it's a crime in this country and in all of Europe.
Niran, can I? It's extremely shocking, and as you say, not only sad. It's very sad. It's also very worrying indeed that you feel that you are as intimidated now here as you were when you lived in Iraq as a Jew, and that should worry anyone who believes in the values of tolerance and openness for which Britain has been long famous. Can I just ask, though, Niran, a little bit more about, because as you may have heard in the news this morning, there's been this report published by the Community Security Trust, which is this excellent trust which does work to keep Jewish communities up and down the country safe. They provide protection in synagogues, schools, and so on.
Yep.
You mentioned just earlier your children. Tell me more about, has anything happened?
No, thank God. Thank God nothing happened.
Right.
But I am very, very careful. I try to take my son to school and try to pick him up from school. I'm trying to avoid, I'm asking him to avoid to show his logo, his emblem on his jacket, because it's a known Jewish thing. We never, I'm not religious, my family are not religious. I never, especially recently, I used to be before when I came to this country. Now, they don't put a kippah on the head. Not to show that I'm a Jew. This is exactly what happened in Iraq. Exactly the same thing.
Yeah, well,
and it's frightening. It's frightening.
Of course it is, and I my sympathy, of course, goes to you and to anybody else who feels the same, and indeed to your children. And of course, the tragedy of it, and it really is a tragedy, is that just as incidents of violence, discrimination, hatred, even appear to be on the rise against members of our Jewish communities up and down the country, there are also incidents of anti-Muslim hatred and violence increase. This is the terrible thing, is that at a time of great international tension and violence and all the other worries that people have, is that you get communities in a sense, set up against each other. And we all need to work with you, we need to work with organisations such as the CST to say loud and clear that in this country, everybody is equal before the law. Everybody is entitled. We've just had a discussion about my view that we should protect the halal traditions for Jewish and Muslim communities. People should be able to maintain their traditions in a way which allows people to coexist peacefully. And I am very anxious, Niran, that we as a government should do everything we can to work with you, with your community, with your family, with the CST, to make sure you feel safer than you do right now.
Well, that's all very worthy, Mr. Clegg. What are you going to do with David Ward, one of your MPs, who continually tweets anti-Semitic comments?
Well, this is where it gets difficult, or it gets at least.
Well, you're the leader of the party.
Well, no, hang on, let me tell you, I don't think when he, for instance, made the most crass, insensitive remark about the Prime Minister of Israel being in Paris after the Jewish. Do I think that was racist? I thought it was daft. I thought it was offensive. I understand that, but I don't think it was racist. And the reason why I know, contrary to your views and others, I'm quite sort of punctilious about this. Is this: if you start saying that every time someone says something which someone else finds offensive, that it is racist, it seems to me, you blur the distinction between racially motivated hatred, racism, and frankly, just offensive free speech, which, oddly enough, of course, was the subject of a lot of debate around those terrible attacks on Je suis Charlie. That is, I accept, a matter of judgment and indeed of opinion. But my view is that if we're going to pick our way through this time of great tension, in exactly the same way that we need to protect Niran's right unqualified right to take her children to school, to do so without fear, to have her children display their identity with pride and not with fear, we also, because it's part and parcel of the same thing of being a free, liberal society, we also need to, even when it's unpopular or controversial, draw the line between people who say offensive things and people who say racist things. Where they say racist things, we've got to come down on them like a ton of bricks. Where
who's going to judge what's offensive and what's racist?
Of course, in terms of as Iran said, the law is very clear in terms of when violence is racially motivated or driven by hatred. There are occasions where Liberal Democrats have said things, and indeed MPs of other parties, which seems to me to cross the line, and then there are consequences. On that particular instance, saying what he did about the presence of the Israeli Prime Minister in Paris, I thought it was wrong. I thought it was insensitive. I didn't think it was racist.
All right. A couple of emails. This Graham in Bushy. Is it right that the former prisoner Chris Huhne still has a pass to get him into the House of Commons? He's no longer an MP.
Look, the rules are that you can, as an ex-MP, you can get this pass if you have, unless you've been in prison for more than 12 months. And he was in prison for, was it 8 months?
Yeah.
So look, he's the rules are the rules, and I honestly think we can't start constantly rewriting the rules because people may dislike or like this or that individual.
Okay, so you're happy with that?
Yeah, well, he's abiding by the rules.
Okay. Teddy in Kent, how satisfied are you the measures brought in by Theresa May will protect journalists from unnecessary police snooping?
I think we've made real progress. Fine. I've been urging Theresa May for some months now to make sure that when the police want to have access to the confidential, privileged information that journalists have, which is essential for them to do their job, which in turn is essential to keep people in power on their toes and to uncover
news desks, phone contacts, and political editors.
I've always believed that the police should have that power, but they should be subject to a judicial decision, judicial discretion. And thankfully now the Information Commissioner published a report, I think it was yesterday, saying exactly the same thing, and we're now going to act on that as a government. I'm delighted, because I've for a long time been arguing that we should make this change, because I want to strike the right balance between giving the police the powers they need, sometimes to go after privileged, even confidential information, but not do so randomly, and certainly not to do so in a way which has a chilling effect on our traditions of freedom of expression.
So when will this actually be? Can we get this done?
We're hoping to pass I need to double check, because this is all quite a fast-moving thing.
This is the serious crime bill.
Yeah, serious crime bill. So
later this month, isn't it?
Yeah, we're hoping to pass that amendment.
How much coalition support is there for this?
So now, my point was, I've been arguing this for some time. I need to double check, but I think the Conservatives now have come to the same view, which is good, because it means it'll happen.
Let's get to another call. Where should we go?
To John in Devon. Hello, John.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yes, it's a nice morning down here, lovely sunny. Basically, my question to you is, what are your views on this? Why is it that people feel it's necessary to introduce sex education into a 5-year-old to 7-year-old class? Because I'm astounded and gobsmacked.
This is the idea from the shadow.
I'm astounded and gobsmacked, John, at some of the ludicrous sort of coverage of this. So this idea. I mean, some of the stuff I've seen in some of the papers claiming that this would be, foisting condoms on classes of 5 to 7. It's ridiculous. It's actually simply saying that what a lot of schools do anyway, which is in an age-appropriate way, of course, talking to kids about sex and relationships as they go through school is a very, very powerful antidote to things like teenage pregnancy, to the communication of sexual diseases, to sexual harassment and bullying, to online bullying. And of course it's not about saying, look, I've got a 5-year-old and 10-year-old at primary school. Do I want them to be sort of subject to information? Which, frankly, if my 5-year-old was, he would. Of course that's not the idea.
Frighten the horses.
I just think he'd be completely nonplussed. It's just astonishing, some of the kind of claims that those like me who believe that it is right to equip our children as they go through school.
Isn't it the role of the parents?
It's also the role of the parents. Of course it is the role of the parents. And actually by the way, the best classes...
If I had a 7-year-old, why is some teacher going to start telling him or her about, in very, very, I know very moderate terms about reproductive organs? I don't want it as a 7-year-old. If you don't want that for your child, you can say that as a parent. The vast majority of schools who do this well, do it in conjunction with parents. They talk to parents, they say what they're going to teach us.
I had an experience with my 8-year-old.
What happened?
He was 8 at the time, and now he's 9. And he's coming home telling me he's having his lessons. I wasn't consulted.
Do you know what's in the lessons, John?
he kind of gave me his idea of what was in the lessons, but that's why it pricked my ears and went, well, surely I should have known that someone was sitting down with you guys and talking to you.
Well, actually, John, funny enough, as a parent, I actually agree with you. I think it is best if parents do know, but I also think we should, most teachers and head teachers, they're not daft. They care about the children in their care. They're not going to start saying stuff that's inappropriate to kids. I'll tell you where there's an interesting thing here, by the way, which is that I've long believed that if I don't know what's does your son go to just a maintained school, or what kind of?
It's a state school, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you see, the guidance on sex and relationship education is something that it has to be followed by sort of, if I can put it like that, normal state schools, but not to free schools and academies. I think that's a bit strange. So I've tried to persuade my Conservative coalition colleagues to say, well, hang on a minute, if a little boy or a little girl deserve to be taught about sex and relationship education, to make sure that they can sort of deal with things as they get older, particularly as they go into their teenage years. Why aren't you going to do that for the boy and the girl in the neighbouring school that so happens to be a free school or an academy? And so I think that's what we need to do. We need to do it consistently and sensitively. And remember, the evidence is overwhelming. If you do it well, it actually helps protect the health of our children as they get older.
A trade union, thank you for that, John. A trade union, Unite, has been interviewing more than 1,000 people in a city you know well, Sheffield, asking them their voting intentions. If it is reflected in the election, it's not good news for you. LBC's reporter Ella Griffith has been on the streets of the city that is the jewel of the north.
If I had to, yeah, I would. I would vote.
Why would you vote for him?
Because any others, I don't really like. He's nice and he does know what he's on about.
I won't be voting Nick Clegg, no. He works for Tories for a start, so we're Northerners, so we're not right into Tories, I'm afraid. But I guess they're all the same though as well.
Quite likely. Not completely decided, but yes, probably will do.
Why are you thinking that you might do?
Because I think he's brought a voice of moderation to the politics of this particular government.
So there we are. Two say yes, you're nice, you do know what you're talking about, you've got a voice of moderation. One says they probably won't vote for Nick Clegg. This poll from the Union suggests that Labour have 33% of the share of vote. The Lib Dems, your party, have 23%. How worried are you?
I mean, this poll is such utter bilge. Here, surprise, surprise, the trade union paymasters of the Labour Party come out with a poll which shows the Labour Party's ahead. Look, unlike these Unite bosses that sort of pay for the Labour candidates up and down the country, I actually am out and about. I'm tomorrow, obviously, out and about, knocking on doors in the streets of my wonderful constituency in the most beautiful part of the north, southwest Sheffield, and I've been doing it for 10 years. It's one of the greatest privileges of my political life. Of course, as actually your excerpt showed, there are some people, of course, and I meet them, of course, who say, I hate the Tories so much, I'll never forgive you for going to coalition. And of course, I try and explain to them, no one won the election. It was the only way we could form a stable government. Of course, I'm not a Tory, far from it.
You're nice.
The longer you said it, the longer I've governed with them, the more I realise why I'm not. But if we hadn't formed that coalition, we wouldn't have pulled the country back from the economic brink. And look, it's my job, like any MP in any seat, to explain why I want to carry on serving the community that I have done for the last 10 years.
Was the boss of Boots right? The boss of Boots, Stefano, seemed to say that Labour would be a catastrophe. If Ed Miliband got in, it would be a catastrophe. Labour subsequently went on the attack about his personal tax affairs.
Oh, look, I think his personal tax affairs are his, but he clearly would be in a strong... I think as Boris Johnson said, it would be in a slightly stronger position to talk about British governments and politics if he was actually a taxpayer here. But, frankly, regardless where he pays tax or what his passport is, the point he makes about how Labour just appears to have absolutely nothing constructive to say about how we run our economy is broadly right. I mean, it just beggars belief that after what is it? They crashed the economy in 2008. It was like a near-death experience for our economy. They were responsible, not entirely, but largely for it. I haven't heard a word of remorse. I haven't heard a word of apology. Worse than that, I haven't heard a single kind of word of what they would do to avoid those mistakes in the past. In fact, Danny Alexander and I are talking about this later. The Labour Party still sticks its head in the sand, doesn't want to deal with the deficit on time over the next few years, wants to sort of drag out the whole task of dealing with the deficit. That means more years of kind of spending restraint and higher borrowing costs, which is not very fair for our kids or grandkids.
How many business leaders support the Lib Dems?
A few.
Can you name some of them?
Oh, who was I talking to the other day? Oh, the founder of those wonderful drinks, those innocent drinks.
Oh, yes. Who's that, then?
He's called Richard Reed.
Yeah. So you've got innocent.
There's one, yes. And they have their bill.
Yeah. No, that was funny.
That was funny.
Right, lastly, they're through the class barrier. Middle-class shoppers now go to Lidl and Aldi proudly. When did you last go to a Lidl or an Aldi?
I haven't been to a Lidl for ages. I have been to an Aldi some months ago, but
Right.
but I'm not a regular Aldi or Lidl shopper.
You're not?
No.
Well, where do you choose
Well,
to
just
go?
I go to the supermarkets nearby.
Right.
Sainsbury's, Waitrose.
But you would go. You have no problem.
Yeah,
going.
I've got no problem
You do
at
a dinner party from Aldi or Lidl as everyone.
Oh, I think one of the this is why our shoppers, if you like, have got such amazing choice now. If you go, I read something. I think was it from I forget where it was. Something about the kind of some of the best supermarkets now for wine. The
Aldi,
supermarkets you wouldn't expect.
Been revealed. Aldi
is that today?
the wine retailer of the year.
So it's great. So it means they're not just competing on price; they're also competing on quality. That's great.
They're not good
more
on,
choice.
They're not good on Rioja, I've heard that.
Okay.
Nick, thank you
I'll pass it on.
Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg here, appearing exclusively on LBC with Call Clegg. News is next.
The Deputy Prime Minister has told LBC he doesn't agree with a report by MPs which says the UK should be taking more action against IS.